to Defending Our Children with host Craig Sawman Sawyer, former Navy SEAL and federal agent, and Executive Director Forrest Seeley, both of Veterans for Child Rescue, an NGO actively engaged in the fight against child trafficking. Defending Our Children is the show that empowers the people with the information you need to know.
Welcome, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We have for you today a friend of mine. I'm proud to introduce Mr. Mark Geist. Once upon a time, we were working the same contract overseas for our government, and his location got attacked. And you may know the book and the movie. He's a best-selling author of 13 Hours. Many of you have seen the movie and the film of what happened in Benghazi. Mark's also a canine handler, speaker, consultant, and so much more. And I really have appreciated his friendship and his patriotism over the years. So everybody, welcome Mark to the show. Oz, brother, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on and joining us here today about how we can defend children.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So only you have been you. So let us know a little bit more about your journey. What got you here, doing what you're doing now? What does that look like? And what are your motivations? A little bit more of who is Mark Geist.
I grew up in a small town in eastern Colorado, just farming, ranching, rodeoing, cowboying. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. I had 3 uncles that were in during Vietnam. And so when I was getting ready to graduate high school, I kind of figured it was one of two things. I was either going to go work on a ranch or wanted to go into the military. And I ended up seeing meeting the Marine Corps recruiter first. And, he asked I joke about it, but he asked what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to blow things up, jump out of airplanes and anything else that's like that and shoot a lot of guns. And he's like, hey, we got a great job for you. It's called the infantry. So that's kind of where it started. And I loved it. I did 12 years, went through it. I was in the infantry. I was an anti-terrorism, counterterrorism instructor, and then finished my career as a interrogator translator, speak Persian Farsi as a second language, and ended up doing 12 years in the Marine Corps. I got out, went into law enforcement, and that's where I really got my first exposure to to what happens to kids and that kind of thing. And I was certified as a forensic interviewer and did a lot of investigations into that kind of stuff. The Lord blessed me with the ability to get kids to tell me stuff that they should never have to tell anybody. And it paired real well with my background as an interrogator. I always, if I could get somebody to start talking, I was going to get a confession out of them, and execute that conviction as well without having to go to trial is kind of my goal. So the child didn't have to go through doing the testimony of, in court and all of that kind of thing. So that's really what got me there. And then, in 2001, when the war kicked off, I was had joined back up with 19th SF Group in Colorado as the National Guard unit. I hadn't been through selection or anything, and they were getting ready to deploy. And they said, since I didn't have an Army MOS, that I wouldn't be able to go with them. And so I looked into other avenues and started contracting. And the winter of 2004, winter of 2003 to 2004, firstly deployed to Iraq, and kind of the rest of the story's there. Ended up in Benghazi working with the agency, and got blown up there a few times.
Yeah. Well, you survived it. You did it valiantly, and we're proud of you. That whole story was such an ugly betrayal of our nation and of you guys who were there. And it still hasn't been vindicated, and justice has not been brought. So I pray, brother, that during this new incoming administration, that there is a return to legitimacy and justice. The American people are starved for justice, and it's so harmful to the soul of our nation. So I look forward to the truth coming out, and those who are responsible or brought to account, legal account for the crimes they've committed, that we
I
can
agree.
begin to heal and know the truth. So,
I agree.
all right. Well, in your law enforcement time, I heard you talk about something a minute ago that we've learned too, is that in our own daughter's case, it's very hard on a child victim who's been traumatized to testify in a court of law. And I believe in due process, and I believe in the right to face your accuser. So if you're an adult and a child is accusing you of some heinous crime, well, I think it's, in one hand, it's fair to have the child be interviewed to bring that out. But the way our court system is right now, female rape victims, even adult male rape victims, and children who are being grilled in the witness stand, it's being done in a way that is unhealthy and harmful. And I'm submitting the idea that there's got to be a better way. We have to find a way not to re-traumatize those who have been legitimately harmed, because it's brutal in the courtroom. And in our daughter's case, her own rapist and violent attacker who held her at bay while he had assaulted her repeatedly at knife point was allowed to represent himself and interrogate our daughter on the witness stand and accuse her of all kinds of vile things that she hadn't done, accuse our family of horrible things that weren't true. And, he dismantled himself in the end in so doing, but still the process was horrible. So I'm glad to see you make that observation out of compassion. I don't know what the solution is, brother. Maybe you have ideas on how that can be navigated, how people don't get railroaded and prosecuted unfairly for something they haven't done, but how we can actually protect the victims through that process better than what's done now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, and we've used it a few times, especially in cases where the perpetrator or the accused is representing or trying to represent themselves as do it via, so they're not having to be in the same room. They could do it via, video. Nowadays, I'm talking back in the mid '90s, latter '90s, early 2000. But nowadays, with the technology that we have, there's no reason why a victim, and especially the children who are the most vulnerable, should never have to be in the same courtroom as or in the room itself with the person that perpetrated, or at least allegedly perpetrated the acts on them. I think that's just undue and unfair to the children themselves. Because a lot of that is overcoming that sense of security and safety. The kids have been, that are violated, that they lose that sense of survivability, of safety, of security. And the therapy to go in to get that fixed and to work on that starts immediately from after they're recovered or rescued, or where law enforcement intervenes, and to then a year later, maybe 2 years later, depending on how the court process goes, then to have to put them back in there and readdress that, at least face that guy or gal or whoever it is in person, I think needs to be, we definitely need to do some adjustments there with our legal system on that. And I think we can do it without violating the perpetrator's constitutional rights as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember they gave us, our family, little foam squeeze toys for the court. And I thought that's silly at first, until we were sitting there when this monster was parading around the courtroom and giving us dirty looks and blowing kisses at me, when the judge couldn't see him. And my daughter was sitting there next to me, and I was sitting between my daughter and my wife. My wife nudged me, and I looked over at her, and she nodded towards our daughter, and I looked over at my daughter, and she was sitting from the waist up, stoic and strong as you could be, but her little knees were just shaking. And she was having to deal with this monster in her presence, and it was, I don't know, it felt horrible, and it needs to be avoided. There's a way. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Folks, stay tuned. We're just getting started with Mark Geist. We'll be right back.
Every day in America, children are trafficked for sex. In schools, shopping malls, truck stops, clubs, and bars. Think it can't happen in your neighborhood? Think again. If you suspect a child is being trafficked for sex, call the National Human Trafficking Resource Center 24-hour hotline at 1-888-373-888.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We're on with Mark Geist. You may know him as one of the Benghazi heroes. He's a friend and a brother, and we're grateful for his patriotism and his service to the nation. And leading up to the show, I was drinking some of my Veterans for Child Rescue Roast organic coffee. This stuff is amazing. We sourced it from a really great roaster, and I learned a lot in the process that you need to find a roaster that's really good at it, that won't burn the coffee or make it taste bitter in the process, and the sourcing has to be very, very careful. So I pray out loud over every batch of coffee that comes in for Rescue Roast, because I want it to be blessed, and I want everybody to benefit from buying it and drinking it, because it helps support our mission. That's the only reason we have that product available, is because the revenue goes to help support our operations to defend the children from these predators. So thank you for going to v4crr.org and ordering your Rescue Roast coffee. So,
hey, I would add, Craig, it's Christmas time. These are great stocking stuffers.
Oh man, I'm glad I just thought of that.
That's what I'm here for, to be your conscience.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to grab some myself and use it for that. That's epic. Mark, you're talking about balancing the perpetrator or the accused having the right to constitutionally face his accuser, but also protecting the children and the victims. Do you have any methodology, or what are some ways, if you have any, that you think of where we could better do that?
I mean, first and foremost for me was to make sure that the information that I'm getting can be irrefutable in court. And I think that's the responsibility of the interviewer of the child. And, and that goes everything from determining, and I used to do it on video, because everything would be videotaped, and I would determine my first thought was to determine their comprehension of in and out, of on top, below, all of the different, their educational development, because that's one of the things that, when they start talking about what happened to them and they're using those certain words, those descriptive words, which they have to use. And that's one thing, as the interviewer, you have to get that descriptive, very descriptive actions brought out, because, and if you're doing it where you've already established what their developmental level is, and understanding when they use those terms, what they're saying, if that makes any sense. If they say inside, and then later, and I do that just by drawing a circle. Hey, can you draw me a picture of your family inside the circle? Do you have any pets? Yeah, okay. Can you draw what kind of pets do you have? And then can you draw that on top of the circle and to the left of the circle, or right and down below, and all of that kind of stuff? Because then when the defense attorneys come in, that's what they're usually attacking, is the interview process. So that interview process of the victim has to be done very good. And, and it can't be, you can't use those leading questions.
Right.
There's a lot of studies out there that have shown, especially the younger the child is, the easier it is to lead that individual down a road that may be not correct.
Yeah. Very impressionable.
Yeah. And being you're putting them in the setting. And that's why, we always partnered with the local children advocacy centers, and we would do our interviews there, not at the law enforcement station, because again, by putting them in the station, or in a law enforcement setting. They see the cops, they see the uniforms, they know they're in charge. They have that, their studies show that children want to please the person that's in charge. And
It's intimidating.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intimidating, but it's also influencing them that they want to tell us the right things, the correct things. And so we don't want that. And you put them in a whole, a different environment, and see how that works. And that, we really find that works well. And then with the, you get through that, because that is what they're going to attack, is how you've done that. Because most defense attorneys realize that they can't attack the victim, especially when it's children, because if they do, they just lose the sympathy of the jury. But then also when I do an interrogation, my interrogation starts from my first contact. I always tried to have them come in voluntarily. And a lot of times it's not too hard with, especially the perpetrators on children, because they are, the narcissistic tendencies of them, and the ability to talk their way out of things is what I play upon, and I utilize that. And my interrogation starts when they walk into the room. I don't put them in a interrogation room. I put them closest to the door. I set things up so they can so the defense attorney can't come back and say, well, he felt, because he was on the other side of the desk and you're in between him and the door, he felt like he couldn't leave. Because I really like to do a non-custodial interrogation or interview of the perpetrator, because again, I want to get them as comfortable as possible. And then when that happens, it's a whole lot easier to get them to talk, and ultimately give them a choice. Hey, these are the kind of people that do this. And you're either this or this, and let them take, usually they'll admit to the least of it. And if you're looking for their verbal behavior and their nonverbal behavior, all of that kind of coincides and uses, you can tell whether or not they're telling the truth or they're lying to you. And ultimately, again, it's pretty easy to get a confession out of them, because they want to convince you that there's an excuse of why things happened the way they did,
Right.
And all of that. And the defense attorneys, if you do that right, the defense attorneys will plead it out, because they know they're going to go to jail for a very long time if they go to court.
Right. And that's what we're experiencing. So I appreciate what you're bringing out about the interviewing style of the children and our encounters with law enforcement across the country. In some cases, we're seeing where they're not trained, and they know it, and they need better training. They desire more training on how to deal with the children, because they're used to dealing with the dope and the other crimes, right? That's normal stuff. But dealing with a child takes special care and special techniques, and they realize they're not all adequately trained, and that's something they deserve and the children deserve. So that's something that really needs to be added to our local law enforcement training. I think the federal agencies have a lot more support and advocates on hand for that, and I'd like to see that not trickle down, but flood down to our local law enforcement as well, so that wherever children are being dealt with, they're in good hands.
Yeah, and that's where I think communities themselves and people that want to make a difference in that, contact your local law enforcement, whether it be police or sheriff's department, but also see if they have a children's advocacy center, because a lot of times those children advocacy centers, it's a public-private partnership with government that run those, and donations can be made to those to help with that and understand what's going on. But as kind of like as to what you alluded earlier with the the squish toys, donating things like that, that really help, and giving those kids, and anybody that wants to get involved, they can find a way to do that if they're really looking for that.
Yeah, there seem to be so many judges that make judgments involving children that seem so callous and negligent. You have to wonder if it's just outright corruption in many cases, because they'll give the children to proven predators. Once the father, like it turns out to be a monster, there's so many cases we're hearing about where their children are awarded to them. And anyway, if we get back to care for the children and compassion, I think collectively we'll do it a lot better. So folks, stay tuned. We'll be back with a lot more from Oz Geist.
Are you or a loved one struggling with addiction? Rancho Milagro Recovery is an accredited drug and alcohol addiction recovery program treating the whole person through their lifelong recovery process. Our process incorporates both medication-assisted treatment and psychological therapy to help all aspects of an individual's mind, body, and spirit. Our lavish accommodation sits on 60 acres of outdoor greatness where your privacy and discretion is our utmost concern. Find lasting recovery and walk away from addiction one step at a time. RanchoMilagroRecovery.com.
Welcome back to Defending Our Children, folks. We are on with Oz Geist. We are talking about the different things that he has seen with children, mainly courtroom and cases, how to interview children, do it effectively without causing any harm for these cases. So, Mark, I'm sure you're educated on the interviewing techniques and the body language and all of it. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about to kind of educate people and let them know a little bit more of what's involved in ascertaining the truth whenever you're interviewing a child victim like that, some of the things that go into it?
Well, and a lot of the body, the language stuff, the body language that people talk about applies more to the perpetrators. Doing the interrogations of them or the interviews of them. I call them all interviews because of just the nature of what it sounds like. But it's the way you ask the question to the perpetrator, but what his body, because everybody talks about, well, they cross their arms, they're looking up and left or down and right, and this is what each one of those means. Well, from my training, my experience of doing this for a lot of years, there's other things that I use to help indicate whether or not being deceitful or not. And that's the combination of the verbal behavior with the nonverbal behavior and how they act when I'm asking them that question. Have you ever touched a child inappropriately before? And I'm not getting in, if I ask the question during an interview with the perpetrator, I'm being very descriptive. Exactly how this would have happened. And you'll see them then they have their actually you've established the first part of the interview is establishing their normal body movements when you're asking questions. So then when you're asking those pertinent questions, it changes and their tone changes or things like that. That's really what's telling you whether or not they're being deceptive or not just the body language itself. And it's one of those things that I think anybody can be taught this. I think it just takes them doing it and seeing it. A lot of role playing with the right kind of people is the best way to teach it, and get them over that hump. Because it's really different than interviewing a perpetrator for other things, really. And so it does take a certain skill set to do it, and it takes a certain mindset of the interviewer. Because you are talking about things that most people, especially men that have children, don't want to talk about. They don't want to believe that this kind of stuff goes on in the world, and unfortunately it does.
Yeah. And if you get perpetrators who are sociopathic or even psychopathic in nature, they'll tell you exactly what they did. They don't seem to have any reservation or shame of being that callous and having zero compassion for their victims. It's is a very strange thing.
It's that narcissistic tendencies that and that they have been damaged themselves to the core. Not necessarily from being physically damaged or anything like that or emotionally damaged, but I think spiritually damaged.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we could crack open a little bit more. And it's not to condone any abuse or abusive behavior, but we're finding that so many of those who harm children were harmed in their childhood. So it's like an exponential attack on humanity that if one child is traumatized so badly and harmed so cruelly, with such cruelty, I'm sorry, and such a vicious and callous nature, it turns them bitter and angry. And if they don't get help, they can grow up to be monsters themselves and harm many more children. And then you see those harming even more. So conversely, if you raise up a child with love and compassion, where they know that they're loved and that they matter, they tend to raise other children that way. So it's an exponential factor of multiplication. How we treat the little ones is very, very important. So what are your observations on that dynamic of it? Awesome.
Yeah, I agree completely, and it's one of those things that getting the right help for them immediately and as soon as possible, and continuing that help, that therapy, in processing all that. There's a great book out there. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it's great. I mean, it's good for both childhood trauma, PTSD, all of that kind of stuff. And, I mean, because even with PTSD as our veterans, a lot of times what I've found in what I've been doing with my nonprofit is finding that a lot of them have unresolved trauma from childhood. And again, so then when they have that family again, and then it gets redamaged again, that's kind of what you run into. And the outcome is a lot severe because they've never dealt with it. You got to deal with that trauma that's inside you. And that's why it's so important to intervene from a law enforcement standpoint, from a therapy standpoint, as soon as possible. I know a lot of this stuff has been out there in the news talking about the children that have been lost, that have come across our border. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. To me, it's a stain on us that if we don't do something different and try to locate those children and locate their parents or their legal guardians and reunite them on whatever side of the border they're all on, because a child deserves to be in a safe environment.
Yeah, they need love, man.
Yep.
We are spirit beings, and we need people to love us back, And that's what I've learned too, is many of us adults, although we may not have been physically traumatized or there may not have been cruelty perpetrated on us, there still can be a lot of healing that each human needs, because even just through the heartbreak or betrayal of a friend or a colleague or a family member, that's very upsetting to us. And I think we don't realize that there's healing that's needed from that. And when I see and experience that spiritual healing now in my adulthood, it's so beautiful and it's so powerful. And I hadn't realized how needed that actually is. And there's so many people that have just eaten the pain of their trauma and the things that they've suffered through. They don't even realize that they haven't dealt with it and that there is help for it and there's healing. So I encourage people, seek that out, because it doesn't just go away just because you ate it and didn't deal with it. Doesn't mean it's gone. As Mark pointed out, the physical body maintains that stress, and it manifests in the form of disease and tension and other things. But there is hope, and there's a lot that can be done to relieve us of that and redeem and heal. And forgiveness is a huge part in it. Huge part.
Yep, for sure. For sure. It is that, your cortisol levels get affected. I mean, how the impact that it has, something as simple as a divorce in a family. I mean, that's why it's so important that our family, that family unit stays together and stays strong as much as possible. They don't realize the damage that does in divorce on the children. It breaks down that sense of security and safety.
Yes, it does.
Affects them. I mean, whether, and then somebody gets remarried, or there's men or women that come in and out of the custodial parent's life, just builds a big distrust in those children, and just sets them up to be victims of other things throughout their life.
Well, Mark, we got a lot more to go. We're halfway point in the show. Please let people know where to find you and support what you do for this break.
Best thing for me is, obviously I've got my own website, but more importantly to me is it's an organization me and my wife started after Benghazi called Shadow Warriors Project. We help the private military contractors, and that's what we started, but we're really growing from that. Going into the new year, our biggest thing that we're focusing on is the spouses. The unsung heroes of all these wars are our spouses who, when we come home beaten and broken, are there to support us. And we've never paid attention to the trauma that our leaving and coming home and leaving and coming home has been on the spouses and the children. Suicide rates for spouses of veterans and contractors that have deployed is as high as what it is with the veterans at roughly 22 a day. And we've
Couldn't
really
agree more, brother. Listen, we do have to cut to a break. We'll continue on the other side. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Defending Our Children. And hey, Craig, I just wanted to do a shout out to chemicalfreebody.com and their great Green 85 formula that we both take, that has all of the essential vitamins that we need to take care of these bodies that we've wrecked over the years. And also they've got some new mouthwash, and they've got some new toothpaste that's really healthy for you. Check out chemicalfreebody.com/DOC, and you can get some savings by using the code DOC and support us helping the children.
Right on. Thank you, Forrest. Well, Mark, we're covering a lot of ground in this interview, and I know one of your passions is canine work, and you're a handler and a trainer. And I tell you what, our dogs in our family, they're not working dogs, but they serve a purpose, and they guard the home, and they love us, and we love them back. And it's amazing how much connection there can be with a simple beast, a four-legged beast, and how valuable they can be in your life, and how much love and healing they can bring. So do you want to talk about the canine aspect of your journey and unpack that a little bit for people?
Yeah, for sure. I was my service dog, Roan, and she's named after Tyrone Woods, who got killed next to me in Benghazi, was given to me by another nonprofit, and that led me into a whole different avenue of things. I mean, I grew up with dogs on the farm and on the ranch, cow dogs, this and that. I grew up, my horse was probably like my best friend growing up, but dogs, it's just completely different, especially having that service dog and the right service dog for you. I got my dog from a group called Baden Canine up in Canada. They've been breeding and training dogs for going on 57 years. That's how I learned to train dogs as well. And, there's a spiritual aspect to it. I always tell people that, we live as humans, live in the physical and see in the physical, but dogs live in the physical and see in the spiritual. And people look at me like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, have you ever seen a dog looking down a dark hallway or off into the distance, and their hackles come up and they're growling at something that you don't see? And, I believe dogs can detect evil. They know good versus that. And I trust my dog. And there's so many times that I've traveling, meeting people, my dog will show me whether or not I should be trustworthy to him. You can see one moving in the background there a little bit. They don't get too far. I've got 3 of them sitting with me right now. And they're so in tune with other people. Roan, one time we were down at an event in Oklahoma for Toby Keith, and this lady had walked in who was attending it, and Roan just got up, and she doesn't usually get up without me allowing her to, but she got up, walked over to that lady, and just put her head right on her lap. And the lady reached over and started to pet her and just started bawling. And her friend who invited me leaned over and said, yeah, she just lost her dog this morning.
Oh, wow.
And Roan could detect that lady needed to have something, that compassion. But as well as she's also trained in protection, and, so she can be that aggressor as well. And that's what I love about dogs is, they can be that aggressive, but then 5 minutes later, I can take her around and do high fives with the kids, and show them that, what the dogs can really do for us.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. my wife brags on me that wherever I go, the dogs and the little babies always respond well to me, and it feels nice
Yep.
when that happens. But I do appreciate that the dogs, man, they're sensitive to energy, and you can slice it however you want. I think we're going to continue learning scientifically more and more how that works, but they are amazing beasts, and the horses too. And I hear um, equine therapy trainers say that the horses have a giant electromagnetic field that emanates from their bodies, and that's kind of how they tune into each other as herd animals. And I suspect dogs have probably something the same. Anything that are pack animals probably have that type of that connection. But just fascinating, you know.
It is, everything that's living in this world has energy. And I've seen Roan, and this a lot of it, like Mike, who is the lead, he's the patriarch of Baden Canine. He says, one is dogs. I don't believe in. He's kind of put this to me as dogs aren't descendants of the wolf, and I say that as he does. Is the wolf is something I've never seen a wolf pup or a wolf leave their pack to come be with man. Dogs, I believe, are put on this earth by God to be our companions. And, I've seen Roan track across moving water and not go across the water and then search for the scent again, but travel across it and either travel upstream with the energy or downstream with the energy to stay on that track of whatever it is. And you think about the scent, and it goes to what you were talking about with the energy is, the scent is a dog's tracking you through the woods. How does that dog determine your scent versus the scent of the rabbit or the deer or everything else that's been on that track long before or after, in between, when you've passed? And they stay on that one thing because you're leaving energy behind as you move as well. At least that's
Fascinating.
the
Yeah.
way that we're taught. And it's what Mike talks about. It is it's the ancient ways, and just because something's ancient doesn't mean that it's outdated. A lot of times that circles back around to what we can use and do nowadays.
Yeah, it's interesting to see scientists figuring out what man has known all along, but couldn't necessarily articulate or prove, but they understood it. It works that way. May not understand why it works that way, but that's how it works, and that's wisdom, is understanding how things work. And I celebrate that, because scientists now, with increasing technology, are able to figure out a whole lot more about how the human body works, how animals function, and all of that. So, God's creation is fascinating to me. It's so beautiful that to see the people healing and having the love from the horses and the dogs. I just appreciate you sharing that aspect of your life and your journey, because it's enriched so many people's lives. Just a beast that other people may overlook and take for granted, but if we understand what they really are and what they're capable of, there's a lot of beauty there.
Yeah, we host a Shadow Warriors Project hosts a canine therapy program. I took it from working with horses and that, but we bring in between 5 and 10 veterans or law enforcement, whatever, first responders. We pair them with a dog for the next 7 days. That dog is with them 24/7 over the next 7 days. And, we use the dog to, I use it to introduce them to Christ. I also use it to show them how to manage their anxiety and their stress. And then the day is ended with somebody telling their story. And it's not just their combat story, it's their life story. Again, kind of getting to that idea of getting that trauma that is been there from the beginning, get that out and dealt with too. And the dogs are so instrumental in doing that and helping them overcome a lot of the stuff that bring into light what has been in the darkness, basically.
Yeah. Well, something I really get a lot of entertainment and joy out of now is seeing these little clips of people sharing with their families and their animals. So horses and dogs, really just loving on the little toddlers, the tiny little children. They're so vulnerable, and to see a giant beast of a horse just be very gentle with a tiny little toddler, or a giant dog just looking after and safeguarding the children, that's beautiful to me.
Well, you think about how sensitive they are to energy. When a fly can land on the hip of a horse or a dog, and they can detect that weight of the fly being on them as big as they are. And, again, do they feel the weight of it, or is it the energy that they feel that's there?
Yeah. Well, I don't like flies and I don't like their energy, but we'll leave them out of this discussion, folks. Stay tuned. We'll come back with a lot more with Mark Geist.
Here to review this V4CR topic, Veterans for Child Rescue. Getting rid of child trafficking all around the world.
Rescue Roast. This is being offered strictly to fund our operations. We found a great roaster, chosen our 3 favorite flavors. And our light, medium, and dark roast, we're offering it right now in pre-ground form. If you want to enjoy it in K-Cups, we have stainless steel cups on our website, and they are reusable. Just take the coffee and pour it into the cup. Close it up, put it in the machine. Oh yeah. So go to our website right now, v4cr.org. Order as much as you want on our shop page. We're grateful for your continued support. We're excited about what this means as far as boosting the funding for our operations. Thank you so much for your continued support. God bless.
Welcome back to Defending Our Children, everyone. We are on with Benghazi hero Mark Geist. Mark, a lot of us read the book, have watched the movie, enjoyed you fine warriors speaking out, telling truth when there are some who I would call corrupt who wanted you to just stay silent about the betrayal that happened there and the war that you guys were basically thrust into and that assault. And when your QRF or your response, the cavalry was not allowed to come for you. And it seems as though you guys were intended to be sacrificed. And obviously at the time, and it should be for any time, it was very upsetting for any of us to witness what had taken place, that the reserve response, the rescue was denied and held back. And then it was all lied about later, just very, very deeply upsetting. So to the degree that you would like, maybe tell the people what you think they might need to know about that whole situation.
Well, and I think a lot of it, I talk about it a lot with law enforcement as well as military, is, technology has been great. We've got body cams for our law enforcement officers. We've got cameras all over the cities. So those that are in charge, or at least the elected leadership, if you want to call it leadership, they get to see everything that's going on out in the field. And the thing that by giving them that access to that, then all of a sudden they think they get to have a say in how stuff should happen. And, and that's just like Benghazi. There was a drone overhead probably by midnight, if not sooner than that. Before, when the guys were all over at the consulate, there was a drone showing a lot of that footage. I've seen the drone footage, and there's people back in DC seeing it, and I think they're making decisions based on what they're seeing instead of just listening to the people and having trust and faith in the people on the ground. We are hired to do what we do because we are have a lot of experience, as you know. I mean, the training that we've had over the years, even just to get accepted into these programs, and then the training you get there. I mean, you would think they would trust you to make the decisions, and you have the best, because we do have the best needs of the country involved as well in our decision-making process. And the fact that they want to get in there themselves and try to manipulate that, because since then, I got people talking to me, reaching out all the time. I mean, their FAST company, which is a Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Teams, they're in 2 different parts of the Mediterranean. Basically, they can where they are strategically deployed. I met a guy that said they were over top of Benghazi at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they got turned around. And he explained the things that he explained, and the time and the equipment that they had. It all made sense, and that just recently I've met a retired Air Force who was the ops commander in Aviano. And he was telling me about the planes that they had on the runway ready to go, because what most people forget, because the media was so good at isolating it, is they thought Benghazi was this isolated thing, that there was nothing else going on in the world at that time in the Middle East other than Benghazi. Well, if you went next door to Egypt, that morning was when that true protest happened in Egypt at the U.S. Embassy, and there was throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks and stuff over the walls. Well, once that happened, that put fast companies on alert. That put a lot of military assets all over the Middle East on alert. So to sit there and say that they couldn't have got to us in time, I mean, one, that implies that they knew when it was going to end. Or it's just that they're speaking in a way that it really, to me, it shows how little a lot of those that we elect who have been there, the bureaucrats behind all those that are elected as well, believe the American people are just idiots. And, and that's not a left or right thing. That's a them versus the people kind of thing in my mind. We've been able to locate through open source intel. I think we have 5 of the individuals who dropped the mortars on me and Ty and Glenn, killing Ty and Glenn. We have their names and their and other information. I'll just put it that way. It's been given up through the chain, but no one wants to do nothing with it. And things like that. And that was all through open source intel. We were able to follow Sarah Adams. She was an analyst, and she had been in Benghazi and had left the day before. She's been able to identify exactly who gave the order, which came from the leader of Al Qaeda. If you want to know more about all of it, go read the book Know Thy Enemy, written by her and Boone, one of the guys that was there with us, and what they've found and have passed on, but nobody wants to do anything about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it feels bad, and it shouldn't. If you know your nation's behind you and acting in good faith in your best interest, it doesn't feel like a betrayal that way. So,
right.
Craig, the one common theme that I see as an observer over the decades of what we're talking about is, why is it that we don't do what's right? Why does our political leaders, why do we allow them not to do what's right? Sometimes you have to do what's right, or I think all the time you have to do what's right. And this was as an observer, when this was happening, I was very fascinating, Mark, and I'm a civilian, by the way. I was very fascinated and I was very angry because I knew from day one they were shoveling horse crap. But the thing that I think people are fed up about, and we talk about this a lot, is we need to do what's right. And oftentimes the guys that are on the ground, they know the answer to that question, and leadership doesn't. And they have, like you said, they have to trust leadership, or the leadership has to trust you to make the right decisions. Otherwise, you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's exactly what it is. And if your people aren't, in the Marine Corps, we always called it commander's intent. And that gives you the flexibility, a broad left and right lateral limit to be able to do stuff. And as long as you're keeping that commander's intent in account, and, if people aren't doing what the commander wants, then it's a failure to train or a failure to lead. And that's what we get a lot, is those type of failures. And that's what caused a lot of what happened in Benghazi, because they didn't want to listen to people on the ground.
Yeah. Well, it's that managerial micromanagement tendency of a bureaucrat rather than someone who's a true leader and comprehends what's really going on the ground, and puts the right people on the job and then lets them set about solving the problem rather than try to micromanage them into some sort of disaster.
Yeah,
And, to speak to what you're talking about, Forrest, you talk about politicians not acting in good faith. Well, so many of them have deals where they're making money compromising our national security. So there's so much money that goes overseas that if there's an illegal arms deal to ISIS, or if there's money laundering through Ukraine or what have you, there are too many politicians who benefit from that, and the money launders, and it comes back to their families. And that's something that we really have to investigate and put blockades to prevent in the future, because we see that it's absolutely catastrophic. I mean, we've got hundreds of billions of dollars that we can see that are not being used in good faith, that are being poured into nations that have no loyalty to the United States. And it's been aggravating. So we're all celebrating a return to legitimacy and transparency and accountability with our tax dollars, that they be spent carefully and wisely, as we would want. So anyway, that's something I think we've all gotten a good Christmas so far in winning a restoration of legitimacy with this new regime. We'll see how it goes, but stay tuned, folks. We got one more segment coming up with Mr. Oz Geist.
Hey, Tim James here. You know, when I was 37 years old, I had some severe gastrointestinal issues. I was tired, fatigued, wasn't feeling good, skin issues. My health was a mess. Let's just put it that way. Now I'm turning 52 this year, and I have abundant energy. I'm able to trail run and kick the butts of my 22 and 24-year-old sons. Yep, that's right. And do push-ups and all this other fun stuff. How did I do it? Well, one key ingredient, if you want to get healthy, if you want to get your energy back, you want to get your vitality back, is real nutrition. Our soils have been so over-farmed, 85% of the nutrition is gone today, and then the rest is processed out through these processing plants. So what we have created is a formula called Green 85 juice formula. You can take 1 scoop in the morning, and we suggest you do another one in the afternoon about a half an hour before dinner, and you will revitalize your health. You will get your health back. You will cut your hunger cravings, and you're going to actually cut your grocery bill in half. This product will literally pay for itself because you cannot eat as much food because your cells are now getting the nutrition they need. Go to chemicalfreebody.com/DOC. That's chemicalfreebody.com/DOC. Get Green 85 today and energize your life and your health so that you can feel as good as I do and Craig does and Forrest. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. This is our final segment today with Mr. Mark Oz Geist, one of the Benghazi heroes, American patriot, and I'm proud to call him a friend and a brother. And you know, there's a lot that we can discuss today, but, you know, at the end of the show, especially, we like to leave people on an upswing and really encourage them. The American people have been beaten down and discouraged and demoralized. But you and I, Oz, have been part of solutions all around the world in austere conditions. And we're ones who are inclined to serve. And we see that when people are encouraged, they do better. And we see solutions. So what are some solutions that you've seen? I know you and I have talked about this a little bit. What do you have that you might want to share with the people out there, boost them up a little bit and empower them?
You know, I think first and foremost is get involved. I know a lot of people just don't think that, you know, they can get involved in something, and the littlest of things make a difference, whether that be a donation to your organization or to their local crimes or their, children advocacy center, their CACs, things like that, asking what they can do. I mean, and sharing information. You know, it kind of goes back to the whole thing we used to talk about after 9/11 is, see something, say something. There's a lot of that out there. Informing people what you can do. One of the things that I'm working on now with a tech company, or we're in the discussions to work on, is basically it's kind of like crowdsourcing for investigations, a way to get a lot of information and use the technology to filter through what's chaff, build analytics that come out of that. On the back end will be link analysis and probability analysis, programming of information. So then we can share that with others, and other organizations like yours working with us and doing that is a way to make a difference. Are we going to stop the evil that's out there? Not till the end of times, but that's up to somebody else. But we can sure make a difference, or make it tough on them to exercise their evil. And everybody getting involved and seeing something in their neighborhood, in their community, in their friendships, in their schools. Make that difference. And really, that's the best thing you can do, because you out there can make that difference by seeing something and telling somebody, hey, I saw this or that. I was talking to a lady recently, and they were going around, especially to a lot of the convenience stores that are on the main on some of the high intensity drug trafficking routes and major thoroughfares. And in every bathroom, in every stall, they're putting up signs, stickers on the inside of the door of, okay, this is what you need to do if you think you're being trafficked. Give people contacts, find that information, get a hold of that kind of stuff. If you're driving through somewhere and you're in a bathroom, hey, put that sticker up, because you may save a life, because you'll give somebody access to information to be able to get to help.
Yeah, a way out. An example of the crowdsourcing research and investigation is a documentary, and it's got in my opinion, a ridiculous name. And somebody, multiple friends told me I should watch it. And I thought, what a silly name, until I got into the documentary and I started understanding why they asked me to watch it. It made a lot of sense. And it's a vulgar title, but the title was "Don't F with Cats." And the situation was, there was a guy who was he was conducting animal cruelty on video, and he was publishing it, and people were appalled by it. And he was killing cats in different ways and filming it and putting it up on the internet. And a group of people decided that they were going to start trying to find this guy. And they started networking, and the network grew. And then people started analyzing the videos and the background of his setting and so many things about his videos in every way that they could. And they were pooling their resources. And eventually they found the guy. They tracked all over the world and found where he was in Europe, and then eventually put a stop to him. But he turned out to be a murderer.
I'll bet.
And, a lot of times that when people are cruel to animals, that's not normal. That's not natural. That's a broken person that would be cruel to any living being, because they do suffer, and it's not natural to be that way. So people pay attention to those that are harmful and negligent to anything that's innocent. And so that's an example of people just going, hey, look, man, here's clearly a guy that's out of calibration. He's a monster.
Yep.
And let's find him and put a stop to what he's doing, because God knows what all else he may be up to that he's not bothering to put on video, or that he not dare to put on video publicly. And sure enough, they were able to shut him down. I think he ended up killing himself as law enforcement closed in on him. But at least his murder days were done, right? And his cruelty days were over. So the harm was able to be stopped.
From my experience, almost every serial killer you see it, one, they have poor relationships with their mother. They have tendencies to, and in history of abusing animals. That's a big precursor to understanding, that kind of person that can hurt an animal can hurt just about anything else, because animals themselves are pretty helpless to, and dependent upon humans for their care and their love. So somebody who's willing to do that is willing to do a lot of bad things.
Yeah. It's disturbing to see when someone is that way. Yep. It's not natural. It's not the way that we are created to be. And psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, it's upsetting, because it's so clearly wrong. And I think we need to pay more attention when we see that.
Yeah, we do.
I would say cases of animal cruelty should automatically warrant investigation into something deeper, because it's a strong indicator that that's a broken person through whatever means. They may be horribly victimized, but still, if they've turned into the abuser, there's warrant to look deeper to make sure that nobody else is being victimized. So,
and not only, and to your point, not only looking for other people that may be victimized by them or whoever victimized that person, but intervene with some help for that person. See
Yes.
if we can get in soon enough to stop that from having, manifesting into greater evil.
Yeah. And I do believe in supernatural healing. I think that the worst monsters, if the Almighty decides to heal them, and if they genuinely repent, meaning turn from their wicked ways, turn to their Creator's mercy with a sincere heart of change, He can deliver them and glorify and beautify that soul and cause them to be completely better. But that has to happen from inside that person's own mind. They have to choose that. Nobody can choose for them. But otherwise, once they're a psychopath, once they've reached that, and many times there's no turnaround. That's what we've seen, especially those that are wired to harm children. That's in my opinion, that's a demonic manifestation. And anybody in the court system or the penal system and the prison system, they say, yeah, we don't see those guys change. We don't see them turn around, and the society has to be safeguarded from it. But hey, Oz, we're running out of time. I want to give you plenty of time to drive people to your websites and support what you do, because we love you, appreciate what you're doing, and your service to our nation continues.
Hey, I appreciate that. Anybody out there that wants to see more about what I'm doing, go to my nonprofit's website. It's shadowwarriorsproject.org. And you can see what we're doing, what we've done in the past, and what we got coming up. Another way to reach out to me if interested in speaking or anything like that is at markgeist.com. Both of those are areas where you can interact with me, as well as through social media. Would love to hear from you. Would love to have your support, and God bless everybody.
Thank you, Mark, so much for coming on the show. All you've given to our country. Everybody, please find him. We'll post his stuff on this production once it's up, and we really encourage you to just go and support him. All right. So God bless you, brother. And for the rest of you, join us again next time on Defending Our Children.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Defending Our Children, the show that empowers the people with the information you need to know. Learn more on how to get involved and make a difference at vetsforchildrescue.org, because the children are worthy.